My guest today is Snigdha Kapoor, a US based South Asian filmmaker, and she's known for centering underrepresented voices and creating work that bridges cultural, generational, and personal divides while exploring gender, sexuality, and societal norms. Now, her earlier work, Look Like You, was a ScreenCraft finalist, won the Audience Award at the Asian American International Film Festival, and currently streams on BFI Player. Now, with her newest short, Holy Curse, well, Kapoor cements her reputation as a bold new storyteller whose films spark dialogue around gender, stigma, and the lived experiences of marginalized youth. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome filmmaker Snigdha Kapoor and her Oscar qualified short film, Holy Curse, to the show. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Ward.
Well,
So
I
excited.
watched this film and I have to say, where in the world did you get the idea for this film? Because I love the twist.
Yeah. Well, it is loosely inspired by my childhood. I was very angry when I was growing up, and uh, I have said it so many times, but it still feels like it's still very urgent. It still feels very timely, even though I grew up in the '90s. It feels so true and relevant even today. Um, I grew up thinking I'm a boy. I played sports my boys my age did. I pretty much lived and experienced life thinking I'm a boy. And my father used to call me beta, which means son in Hindi, which is he would also address me with male pronouns, still does sometimes. So just as a child, we didn't really have gender or the understanding of gender the way it was told to us when we started growing up and our body started changing, and when elders in my family in my environment started telling me you're a girl because of this, you cannot sit like this, you cannot talk like this, and that was really confusing to me. And just like trying to like understand what does it really mean when someone tells you you're a girl or a boy. Are we essentially talking about gender norms and how you see identity as these codes and symbols? And so the idea pretty much came from there, which is how I experienced my puberty, when my body when it started changing, and how I saw myself versus how the environment saw me. So that kind of was the genesis of the film. But I also wanted to tell it from the perspective of it's a coming of age story from a non-conforming child's point of view, going through menarche. What does it mean for someone who's non-conforming to go through something which is a biological change, and how that is different from how you identify, internally.
Well,
So that
well, you take a complex topic of gender identity, conformity, and family expectations, and you add a bit of humor. Why the humor?
I would say that was a very intentional thing that I learned from just being a filmmaker for some time. I started as I studied journalism, so my approach was still like very research based, heavy on research, doing thorough, just homework on everything. So a lot of times the process was it kind of became heavy for me. So even with Look Like You, the subject material was very heavy. I treated it also in a very there was humor, but I think it took a lot out of me. And just going through that process, I realized that I need to enjoy the process, especially when we are making difficult, films on difficult subjects. I want to have fun in making, but also telling the story so that the audience might not in the moment think about what they're watching, but once they're done experiencing the film, they go back and then it just hits them what they just experienced. What Because I want the film to be a conversation starter. I want to make films that are culturally relevant, but how do I make them engaging and entertaining in a way where audiences can have fun without thinking that there is a message behind the film? So I think the intent was pretty much to keep that tone irreverent, without being preachy.
Oh, no, you absolutely did this film in such a brilliant way. And what I loved is the fact is you weren't preachy at all, but the way the film ended, it allows the audience to make up their own mind and continue the conversation after the film is over. And I love when films do that, especially in this case, it allows the audience to continue that conversation when they leave the theater. So it was brilliantly written. And I'm going to try to hopefully I pronounce her name correctly. Is it Radha?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the protagonist's name. Yes.
So Radha. So when I was watching the film, I went back a few times, and so Radha's mother, she was very nurturing and told her that her body is just going through changes, and I love the fact that her mother was showing her a lot of love, a lot of respect, understanding, and it's normal for the body to go through hormonal changes. Some could view Radha as being just a tomboy and not necessarily one who wants to be a boy, but just loves to do the things that boys like to do. Then you show that her father and her uncle are really embarrassed by Radha's boyish thoughts and persona, correct?
Right. They're all kind of confused because I think we just it's the generation, it's the belief system that the family has probably inherited, and they still believe in it. For Radha's uncle, for that matter, they come from a generation which is representative of such a large part of society globally, who've inherited these traditions. And then we talk about the current generation, not even my generation, but younger ones. They have so much of the vernacular has expanded, the expression of identity has evolved so much. So it's a very confusing period, especially because Radha and their parents, they live outside, they live in the US. So sometimes it's also viewed as, non-conformity is viewed as a Western concept, like it's not even from India, or from the subcontinent. But the fact is that we've always had queer identities in our pre-colonial society, in our mythology, in our texts, in our architecture, everywhere. But I think it's the modern conservatism and the post-colonial society that has kind of termed this as unnatural. So the family is sort of confused how to deal and navigate with this, and the mother is this interesting gray character where we don't entirely know if what she's saying is whether she truly believes in what she's expressing to Radha, or maybe, or it's just like she's trying to just get it over with, and protect her child. So she's also like indirectly enabling patriarchy, which is what the film largely deals with. So how patriarchy impacts anybody regardless of the gender, even the father's character. He probably has one or two lines in the entire film, and he's one of my favorite characters because that really shows like how sometimes patriarchy, in like traditional families, how your birth order dictates who gets to say the last word. So he's deferring to his older brother for things he may think differently, or we don't know. So this is like the family dynamic that exists in so many families that I was trying to bring out through this specific like film's family dynamic as well.
You did it. And I was, when I was watching it, I was starting to wonder because Radha is visiting from America. So I had a thought, is American culture responsible for her identity crisis?
I don't think so at all. Like I said, it's not a crisis unless you make it sound like it is. It's like that's the larger question that the film kind of explores, is this the thought that anything that's against the notion of conformity of the larger society is a problem that needs fixing. In the film, really, like the family thinks this is a problem. Instead of understanding and nurturing Radha's journey of self-discovery, they think it's a problem that needs quick fixing, as if that would solve some problem. But for the child, they're not looking at life through a political lens. For them, they're just exploring who they are, they're understanding their expression. And in that moment, instead of being supported, I think it's their own insecurity and their fears that are playing out. So I think it's less about the influence, but more about how do we deal with this. So maybe the society doesn't judge us or sees us in a certain way. It's just internal insecurities, which are just so human. That like I didn't want to. I also personally didn't want to judge those characters. I wanted it to be very kind of objective in how I present the family's point of view as well.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point because this was not political in any way. It was really based just on family and the patriarchy, and with with Indian culture, uh, and I know this is with a lot of cultures around the world, but I want to say between India and other countries where the father's the head of the household.
Hmm.
And so, and this film is really truly based, like you said, it's based on family. It's based on traditional belief systems, and and then to rush to fix something. When I was looking at it, I kept thinking, if you're rushing to fix something like this, it's not falling on the child, it's falling on you because you're
Hmm.
the one that is it's the parent that's feeling uncomfortable in this situation, and because to them it's outside of what was normal decades ago. And
Yes.
decade meaning family tradition. Um, so for them, and that's where I saw this. But you did this with such incredible grace in telling this story.
Thank you. Yeah. I think that is something we can all relate to at a human level. Any change or something that we've grown up on, suddenly when someone tells you that this is not okay, you have to, or maybe they don't believe in this, it's a big shift. It's very uncomfortable. So the parents are going through that period, and that's why the film is not trying to give answers, but puts you in that uncomfortable space where you can relate to what the child is going through, and then in the end make a decision if you want to partake in like helping the child, or as a family member, as a parent, even as an ally, or do you want to support people um, who don't fit the mold neatly, of what you think the idea of a certain gender might be. And it's also really like not thinking about gender or labels at this point, but really just trying to be for there for the child, without thinking about all these labels in general. Just being there. I think sometimes we go move too fast ahead, and we're thinking about what would this person think, what would society think, what would whatever. But just maybe just relax and just be with the child, just chill. There's nothing's happening.
Well, I like the fact too that you didn't make the family you didn't put a negative light on the family, because if people watch this film from both perspectives, they're going to understand that from the parent side, it's their idea of love towards the child because they're worried. They see things that they don't truly understand. And then you bring the priest into the midst of this film who tells the family basically that Radha has been possessed by a past relative, a man of all things. And is this belief common in Indian culture?
I think it's just I always say that I really believe in spiritual force, and I support traditions and rituals. I don't think they're inherently bad. It's just the misapplication and misuse of those rituals and traditions in the name of it's just fitting someone's narrative to exploit someone, based on their fears and insecurities. That is what I was questioning, which I think it's less about um, Indian culture, because I grew up in India and I come from that culture. So this was specific to that culture, but I've seen it everywhere globally. There are those manipulative individuals who would try to exploit the situation and make money off you. And so this was one instance which happens everywhere. In this context, this was the priest who was trying to take advantage of that insecurity and make money. But it's not at all a representation of the entire culture at all. It's just individuals in every society, every culture, who sometimes do things that are just exploiting the vulnerable. But that was the intent. Yes.
Well, I'm going to ask you a question, and I ask this question, and I'm going to ask it with unbiased honesty and respect, because when Radha and her cousin are having the discussion about are you a boy or a girl, I got to thinking, when did society start questioning medical science? But also, many, if not all, religions define that there are only two biological physical genders, which is a bit reinforced in the film.
I didn't understand the question. Like your
Well, like, because when Radha and her cousin are having the discussion outside
right,
after she runs off from the ceremony with a priest, and then the cousin chases after her, and still in the process of teasing her. I
right.
got to thinking about that simple conversation between them both as they're standing under the tree, and she's like, how do you know? And then I'm
Mhm.
thinking, okay, where did this thought process come from?
Gotcha. Okay.
Because with society has always followed whatever, let's say, medical science has always said. No one's ever questioned it.
Mhm.
And so when I was watching your film, I got to thinking, when did people start questioning it? Because
I
it's a very it's a very powerful scene.
Right. I think it's not questioning science, because again there is that very nuanced difference between biological sex and gender. Gender is a performance, and I specifically talk about gender norms when I'm in the earlier part of this conversation, when I said how we attach labels and codes and symbols to identity. It's sort of this negotiation that we have, how we want to present ourselves, what the society understands, and then figuring out what's the best way to describe or find an understanding, a mutual understanding. So you understand who I am, I try and make you understand. It's this sort of negotiation that takes place. What happens in with biological sex is different from how you want to identify. And by that I mean, when you're pushed into behaving a certain way which can limit your identity or how you want to express yourself. If I say I'm a girl, for me, when I was growing up, when I started understanding what the society was asking of me when they said you're a girl and therefore you should behave like this, which basically meant I was not supposed to talk loudly, I was not supposed to sit a certain way, I was not supposed to play certain sports. There is so much shame associated with things. My brother, who's also very, very fluid in the way he expresses, he was not supposed to maybe do certain things which are expected of a boy, a young boy, and now growing up as a man. So it's just those labels and norms that are attached to those identity. So I think it's less about a question of medical science or anything of that sort, more to do with just generally how we associate identity with norms.
So
So
she
the
was
film is
basic
trying to.
Yeah, so that means she was basically asking her cousin the question, and I guess the meaning behind her question was how he identifies, correct?
Yes, and a lot of times I think it's I have thought about it. How do you when someone tells you you're a girl or a boy, I mean, what does it really mean? For me, when I saw women in my environment not vocalizing themselves, or just men in the family calling shots, and a lot of times women couldn't express themselves. If my grandmother used to work the whole day, we would have family come over, there'd be like 20 odd people, and the men in the family would be sitting on one side while women are working in the kitchen, and my grandmother was not well, she would do things. So for me, when I looked at the society, I always thought, oh, being a woman means being weak, so I'm not that. I'm so therefore I should be a boy because I guess I behave like them. So this is how I used to think as a child. So for me, gender wasn't about sex as much as it was about what the code and symbolism was to do with being a boy or a girl. So I think this is a larger kind of, you know, I would say the core of the film's theme that I'm trying to bring out. But I also
No,
don't want to.
yeah, and
Right,
I'm completely getting it because I've interviewed even trans actors and trans filmmakers. So and I come from an era where none of that ever existed. And so, even for the past few years, as I interview them, I'm learning,
right.
what their thought processes are, and the things that they've lived through. But you're right. This is a film that, in a way, you have the family that believes that this, the boys and the men, this is their position, and the women and the girls, this is their position, and that's the way it's supposed to be, and those lines don't cross. But then as you're talking, I'm thinking, yeah, but some of the greatest filmmakers in the world are women. So because, I believe that everybody should be able to do whatever they want to do, how they want to do it, and in a way not live by the confines of society.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of courage to question norms, no matter your gender. I also didn't want to label Radha um, one way or another. The character is just non-conforming, non-binary, and I don't know how they choose. The film ends here, but for that character, I don't know how they go on to live their life. In 10 years, they might identify as someone. I have no idea. I mean, the film was basically from the point where they're like experiencing this really vulnerable phase in life. So that is what I was trying to kind of explore, and the courage it takes to just stand up when everyone else is, telling you this is wrong. So just standing up and voicing that, what I'm doing is just, it's not wrong. I'm just being myself, and I probably need some time to figure it out.
Well, the beauty of this film is that there's this neutrality in this film. You didn't lean it one way or the other. It was seamless storytelling from beginning to end with a bit of humor added into it. And it's an absolute enjoyable film to watch. Uh, but again, your storytelling is fantastic because I looked at it as neutral and unbiased on both sides, understanding the family side, understanding the child side. And so, for you, what have been the audience's reactions to the overall film?
It's been really heartwarming. I would say some of the responses are heartbreaking, but also people have gone through this personally. Like I said, I didn't choose to label because I wanted the story to be open, a conversation starter. We've had so many, not just film festivals, but community screenings happening, and the kind of groups that are screening the film, they're reaching out to us. Some groups are specifically about, they're trying to have conversations on educating doctors in the LGBTQ space how to treat youth, trans youth, or they're like some even faith-based groups that are trying to have conversations around unacknowledged forms of conversion therapy. They could be something around, I think there is just so much around patriarchy, around family dynamics. So there's so much for, everyone to kind of, they have their own interpretations and inference. And so I feel like the film, it's doing its job by starting those conversations. And whatever you're, once I've made the film, it's out of my control. Like I shared my perspective, and now what the audience is taking and how they are reading the film is entirely their, it's their own, I would say it's their ownership. And so it's just been beautiful to see how they're resonating differently. um, some people call it a trans narrative. It's valid. It could be that, it very much could be. Some people call it a non-binary story, and it is. Some people call it gender, something to do with gender norms or patriarchy. It is that. It's all of that, so there is no one thing that defines the film, which is what I feel the beauty of, like, this film has been taking it to all kinds of festivals, to be honest. So the other day, I think I was at this festival where a 70-year-old person, or in his late 70s, after a screening, he walked up to me, and he comes from the foster care system, and he was an adoptee, and he said, I really related to the religious trauma aspect of the film. And I never thought of the film as something to be about the religious trauma, but that is something he took away. He was a straight white man, living in the US, grew up here. And so, it's not just people from certain sections or certain communities. It's just resonating with all sorts of people, which I feel really, really happy and grateful for, because I do want to make films that are, culturally kind of pushing conversations. It's not, entertainment is important, but to me it's really important as an individual to have conversations that are, changing the way we look at the world and how we see our values, and especially right now. So this was really meaningful for me personally.
So for you, sitting in the theater with an audience, what was the audience's reactions to the ending of the film? What did you witness there?
So much of hooting. They would be like, some people would clap, they would be like whistles. I don't want to give away too much, but I think it's definitely a big cathartic point in the film. Some people wanted more of, like, an ending, more grand, something that just, I don't know, like, it's but I think I just felt this was appropriate for the film. What just happened, it was grand enough, and it was just appropriate for what this film is. But definitely something that everybody felt good about.
Yeah, um I love the ending. I wouldn't change a thing on how it ended because I laughed at the ending because her family her family believed the curse was lifted, but Radha was thinking the complete opposite. And you couldn't have ended that film any better than the way that you did it. So kudos to you because I loved it.
Thank you so much.
Even when even when you had the camera shot showing her cousin in the background,
Right.
the smile on his face was funny because I think what he was the character that was placed where he was the one looking at everybody.
Yeah, he
And,
has an
and
arc in the film. He has the biggest arc.
yeah, and so he was perfectly placed. And when I was watching the ending, I could not even imagine what was going through Radha's mind at that point. And I think part of it is to me when I was looking at her, I think she was like at that point probably really mad at the priest.
Probably mad at everybody. Like they say in the film as well, that they hate everybody because
Well,
nobody is really trying to understand them.
oh yes, and so well, tell me about the music score because it plays a big role in the film. Were there other films that you used as inspiration when it came to the music?
Uh, no, but I did um, get inspired by Anya Swarda's this film called Happiness. I cannot pronounce the French name, but it's called Happiness. And it's like this seemingly beautiful, vibrant, lush colors. The treatment of the film, tonality of the film had that when it's, but the underlying theme of the film is, again, like how it's a marriage setup, and how this man chooses, he just says how much he loves, he has so much love inside of him that he can give it to more than two people, or like more than one person in a marriage. So he has an extramarital affair, and he tries to make his wife understand that he's essentially sharing love and there's abundance of love. So it's just how the juxtaposition visually and the visual language that the film has, but the underneath, the subtext and the core of the film is just so dark and just so sad for the protagonist. So I think that was like a big inspiration, and there's a lot of like jump cuts, making the audience feel uncomfortable, even though everything feels bright and vibrant, sunflowers and everything around. But that juxtaposition, that was a big part of it. Musically, I think the reason, there were a couple of reasons why we chose that. I come from Indian classical music. I've learned vocal Indian classical music, and I talk about it sometimes in how the structures of the classical world, they can be rigid at times, and sometimes I just wanted to break free. I used to go sit for exams every year for 6 years, and I wanted to like do something different. I wanted to like enjoy, but my guru, as we call them, our teacher, they'd be like, oh no, you have to go through this. So it became very monotonous, and kind of like I didn't understand why I'm doing certain things. What's the point? I understand to learn the craft, like the fundamentals of it, that's one thing, but there could be other ways to apply that skill or the art form that you're learning. So it just felt a bit structured and rigid overall, and so it was very reflective of what we were trying to say through the film as well. And so that played a role. And then also the other reason was, because it's the story is told from an 11-year-old child's point of view, everything to them, because they don't have the vocabulary to understand their emotions, everything just feels 10 times more exaggerated. And so every little moment that to us would just feel okay, whatever, we'll ignore it or we'll get angry and move on, but for the child it just feels like it's huge, like it's no one's understanding them. There are crows, there are elders, the environment, they feel stuck. So all of that kind of added to the intensity of that moment. So the use of classical music and the dramatic effect was intentional in that regard. And big shout out to Alex Simcox, who is the composer, and I worked with him in my first film as well, and he understood that really well and really like helped elevate the, I think, the soundscape of the film, helped me like translate the visual but also like the auditory language in some way.
Yeah, because I noticed the music score, I noticed the dramatic points within the film with the music. And I love the fact, and you had just explained it, where the look of the film is more open, it's vibrant. You didn't go with a muted, dark color palette, which I really appreciated because I think it's overused in short films every year. And to watch your film, there is a freshness to it visually. And I just love that. And I think it went along with the whole story perfectly.
Yeah, thank you. It was also this, we're dealing with puberty, we're also dealing with anxiety or like pressure. So again, that juxtaposition was something of, using orange and blues, which technically don't go together, but they help with the juxtaposition and the contradiction. So it was, again, like the cinematographer to the color team, they did a fabulous job. Like that's all them.
So, what do you want audiences to take away from seeing the film?
I just hope what I said before, like it pushes them to start a conversation around just thinking how we see the world and how we treat those who don't fit that mold, and how can we better support them. I think reinforcing the idea or the question where, do we want to support a child's journey of self discovery, or do we want to make them feel like they're wrong? I think these questions are, again, it's not really about finding answers, but or like instant solutions, but just about how as an individual we want to like treat people around us. That I hope something that is, that the audience can think about once they've walk off out of the theater or wherever they watch the film.
Well, one of the things that I always kind of wondered is I wonder if parents, society, doesn't give enough room, doesn't give enough time for a child to either find self discovery or time to mature or grow. Meaning that, and I'll just use Radha as an example. If her family wasn't freaking out because she was only 11 years old, what would she have been like, let's say 3 4 years down the road? Her mindset have changed on her own and focus more on being a girl, or did she want to continue on with an identity as a boy? I don't think that she was given enough time to grow as a person, and I think that's where we see a lot of failure in society today. We just don't give them room.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it's part of education system to our traditions, everything. It just, I think that aspect of nurturing children when we are young, I think we start attaching labels to ourselves, whether it's going to a good school, getting married, or the template life that we are taught. We rarely question it because we've seen that, and it's not intentionally. Also, it's just we just don't question it because they've existed. They've been passed down, so we are living that life. And I think that's just the larger truth of any society. And I think, yeah, I mean, whatever experiences we go through as children, they pretty much define how we see the rest of our lives, or that they shape our lives. And then we go to therapy a lot of times and trying to like unlearn some of those patterns and find new meanings moving forward. But I guess we're all growing and learning, and so if we can be empathetic towards each other, that would probably make things more easy for all of us. But again, yeah, I don't
Yeah,
wish
you're
to
right.
preach.
I think empathy is the right word here, and we need more of it in this world today. So, how does it feel to be Oscar qualified?
Honestly, I just feel grateful to have this platform. Where else do we get a chance to talk about, films like these, subjects like these? I think this is such a prestigious platform to have the opportunity to have these conversations and meet people on the way, um, who could be your collaborators, they could be your champions, cheerleaders. And we just hope that we can continue making the kind of films we want to make, which is really, really difficult, like as an independent filmmaker. So I think, for me, the goal is just not Oscars, but the conversations that are beyond this campaign as well. Um, but like this definitely helps me get the prestige of the platform, and help just spread the kind of um, message that I want to show through the film.
Well, it's an incredible film. Very, very well done. Impeccable storytelling. And ladies and gentlemen, Holy Curse is the story of an 11-year-old Radha who, while visiting India, begins to question and grapple with her gender identity in a world that demands conformity. Now, instead of acceptance, Radha is subjected to, well, manipulative orthodox rituals by loved ones, believing these will dispel an alleged, well, ancestral curse affecting Radha's thoughts. But what unfolds is a tender, playful, and thought provoking portrait of how society and family can both nurture and oppress, and how young people carry the weight of inherited expectations. This film is full of love, a mother's nurturing nature, but also the males in the family are desiring to reverse Radha's thoughts of being a boy through a religious ritual. Now, this young actress, and I hope I can pronounce her name correctly, but it's Maranal Kashed, who portrays Radha, brings an absolute stellar performance with such powerful believability that she places the audience in her own shoes. Add the music score, and you feel the underlying tone of a bit of humor to lighten a very complex topic of gender identity. And Snigdha, I want to thank you so much for sharing your wonderful film with me today, and much success on your Oscar journey.
Thank you so much for it. It was really nice speaking with you.
Well, you're very, very welcome. And ladies and gentlemen, whenever you can catch Holy Curse, check it out. This is a film that tells a perfect story and you will enjoy it, but at the same time, the power of this film creates conversations on a global scale. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can catch all of the Bondon Cinema interviews at bondoncinema.com. Check out our Prime show, our YouTube channel, and yes, you can listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, Audible, and more. And remember, you'll either see me at the movies or from the red carpet.